Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Quick little video for you today. I am about to fly off to Dubai for the month of March, so should be a good time. I'm gonna meet with some people, do some business, etc. And yeah, it's gonna be enjoy the warm weather and hopefully the city, etc. In the meantime, we're going to talk today a little bit about if you are somebody who is potentially getting US citizenship and should you consider doing that versus not. And we're going to talk a little bit about people who are Americans and maybe thinking about moving abroad, and people who are thinking about maybe whether they should give up their US citizenship, by discussing what are kind of the US reporting obligations, what comes with the gift of a US citizenship, which is quite different from every other citizenship on the planet. So before we dive into that, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Make sure you don't miss out on any of our videos. I try to produce great content for you every day. If you have content you'd like to see me create, put it in the comments below. Happy to see what I can create for you. And if you're interested at all in the subjects that we talk about here, we help you to optimize your international business, optimize your international life for moving abroad, for reducing your corporate taxes as low as possible, reducing your personal taxes as low as possible, getting second citizenships, residencies, asset protection, forming companies, bank accounts, etc. You can reach out to me, www.clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer. There's a link in the description below. You can check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com, and let's get started. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about what comes with this, all right? Because some of the people, I've had some clients who've, say, immigrated to the US, they've been living there, they have a green card, and they were thinking about getting citizenship, and then they're like, hang on a minute, this maybe doesn't seem like such a good deal. So for those of you who don't know, any other country in the world, essentially, if you move abroad to another country, you don't have to report back and file taxes in the country of your citizenship. So I'm Canadian, for instance, and I'm living in Bulgaria, and so I have to deal with things in Bulgaria. I don't have to deal with things in Canada, right? That's a clear distinction. If I move back to Canada, then yes, that I have all those obligations, but then I don't have the Bulgarian obligations, right? So these separate. And as people immigrate, usually they're used to dealing with one country, but increasingly, as we see people being more mobile, more able to travel around the world, more able to go live elsewhere, it's kind of attractive to say, hey, listen, I'm from Australia and I want to take my family and I want to go travel, or I'm from New Zealand or UK or Germany, Austria, something like that, and I want to go be somewhere else. Maybe I want to travel, maybe I want to just live in another country for a while, and not having to worry about your home country is kind of appealing. But Americans don't get that, okay? Americans do not have that benefit. They need to file a US tax return every single year. Now, does that mean they're going to be taxable? There's some things that you can do to navigate and help reduce depending on what your tax level is, but potentially it's not so great, right? Now, the other thing, which is terrible, is there's something called the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, which means that every bank in the world basically has to report to the US. And they don't like that. It's a whole bunch of extra paperwork for them. They're subject to possible penalties. And as a result, they don't want to deal with this stuff. And so often they don't want to deal with Americans. So if you have a US citizenship, doesn't matter if you've left the US, doesn't matter if you are like, hey, listen, I hate the US. I don't want to ever part of the US. I'm never going back to the US. I have dual citizenship, right? Maybe you're like, hey, listen, I'm a Canadian and an American. Doesn't matter. You are going to get your accounts reported to the US, and banks don't like that. So it's going to make it more difficult for you for global banking. Now, it's gotten a little bit easier than it was when they first introduced it, but it's still challenging, and you're still shut out of a lot of things. You're also shut out of things like, for instance, in terms of crypto exchanges, etc. You'll often have a US version that has a lot less liquidity, maybe less trading pairs, etc. You're kept out of certain different private offerings, lots of different investment opportunities. You just can't participate in them, right? So that's not so good. Additionally, you're in a situation where you have something called FBAR, Foreign Bank Account Reporting. If you don't report your foreign bank account, so you just think, like, a lot of people are saying, hey, listen, I want like a plan B, right? I want some backup. I want to put money into a bank account somewhere that if something goes wrong, it's in another currency. You can't have multiple currency accounts in the US, so that sucks. So you can't have a Euro account or GBP account or something like that to diversify. So you have to do that by going abroad. And if you don't report that account, if you just forget, right? You're like, hey, listen, it's over a certain threshold, and you don't report it, you can be nailed with a fine of 50% of the value of that account. Nuts, right? On top of that, you can't escape the punitive tax consequences, right? So if you're in the US and your foreign businesses, say, or foreign investments may be subject to US taxation or US tax rules. Now, this is the same if you're in Germany, this is the same if you're in Denmark or Sweden or Canada or a bunch of other different places. So that's not so different. But what's so different is you can leave those places and then not have to worry about those consequences on your international interests. The US, you can't. So in fact, even if you have a local business, so let's just think, let's say that I am an American living in Sweden. I had a client talking about this recently. So you say, okay, great, I'm an American living in Sweden. What am I going to do? Well, I not only have to worry about Swedish rules on my Swedish company, I have to worry about American rules on my Swedish company. And this can potentially lead to double tax. This can lead to all kinds of nonsense. And so you might say, okay, well then go and form an American company, but then Sweden's going to have a problem with it. So the complications and hassles that go along with being an American are not so great, right? I have more people contacting me in the last year saying, hey, listen, I consider this to be more of a liability than an asset than I've ever seen. And I expect to see that only increase as the rest of the world becomes a more competitive place to live. A lot of these countries are developing fast. They're getting to be much, much better in terms of their quality of life, et cetera, as compared to what it was in, say, the 70s, right? Or even the 90s. And at the same time, they don't have all of this nonsense. So if you're interested at all in some alternatives, certainly you can move abroad, and there's some different ways you can do the tax planning, and we can help you with that. But on the flip side, maybe you want to get a second citizenship. So there's a bunch of different citizenship by investment programs. There's a bunch of places you can go and get residency and live there and work towards a second citizenship to kind of free yourself up. I think it's very smart for Americans more than a lot of people to have kind of this backup plan because, you're more constrained than you are in a lot of different places. So anyway, if you're interested in help with that, reach out to me. You can book a call, clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer. There's a link in the description below. You can check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com. Happy to help you with both figuring out what is the best solution for you as well as implementing that. And if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't, please tell me why in the comments. Appreciate the feedback. Share it with your friends. And I'm going to look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.